So, RiskMatrix. My name is Måns Bark, and I work as analyst specialist in Microsoft Sweden. I've also, during the last 5 years, I've been working with Power BI, and even before what we had in the BI space, so that was SharePoint and other stuff. I also have a history in the project arena for a 4-year period where I worked with solutions for Project Server and Project Online and all those kinds of things. So I still come across a lot of project-related stuff in my flows. A lot of things that I've seen during the last years that have come up are around these RiskMatrix visualizations. We have a standardized pack in Power BI for Power BI in Project Online that doesn't really show a very nice matrix. So people have been doing all sorts of versions of that. But we've recently in Power BI updated the coloring functionalities for background cells in the matrix, and that might not many people know about. What this gives us is not just a nice coloring, but also, and I would just point out that these colors I've selected, you can select any kind of red, any kind of green, or any kind of amber or orange. But not only that, it's also interactive. And this is something that I've seen. I haven't really seen any ones that are interactive, and I think that's important. The one we do have in the package is interactive. So if you click something, it will filter out. So this will do the same thing. I can even select a single cell, and and the opposite, right? So if I select a single project, you'll see the number of risks associated with that specific project, and come up like that. Now this is just demo data, and I'll show what that looks like. Essentially, it's this data that I just mocked up. We've got risks, projects, owners, budgets, impacts, and probability. And I've got two little help tables here. These are dimension tables that are called probability bins. So I want to bin all my probabilities into the 1 to 33%, and I want to bin all my impacts into the 1 to 3 or 7 to 9, etc. I also have some hex colors here. Those are the colors you actually saw on screen. I won't be importing these. I just have them here for reference. But what I've done is that I've actually already imported the data. So I have my impacts, probability bins. I have my risks. I have my risks 1 for some reason. I also have a date here on impact bin, which is kind of funky. We'll fix that. So heading into Power Query Editor, we'll quickly see the issue with the impact bin. It's been changed to a date. 1 to 3 is interpreted by Power BI automatically as the 3rd of January. That's something we don't want. We want this to be a text. The impact sort was actually intended for me to sort one of these things that came into the wrong way, but I come to think of it as actually can be used for many more things. And so let's call it impact key instead. The same thing for probability. So you can use these things for sorting, of course. That's really, really good. But you can also use them for doing other stuff that I'll come to in a bit. So the problem here is that we've got risks, we've got our dimension tables, but we don't have a connection. We don't have the key represented in our fact table here for the impacts or for the probabilities. So we need to create some kind of column here that can connect to the impact key that I just entered, right? To the 1, 2, 3 and the 1, 2, 3 of the probability as well. So the easiest way to do this is just click add column and add conditional column. And the new name can be called impact key. And we look at the impact and we see if it's less or equal to 3, then the output should be 1. Kind of confusing maybe, because 1, why wouldn't it be 3? But if it's less than equal to 6, then it should be 2. And otherwise it should be 3. 3. Tree, not a tree, 3. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Does it work? See, this is number 3 here. We got, that's a 7. That's a 9. 2, 5, correct. And a 1, that's 2. So yeah, that looks good. The impact key seems good. Let's do the same thing with the probability. Probability key. And the column name is probability. The operator is the same. Is it less or equal to? But now we've got percentage. So 0.33, if it's less than that, it goes into the first bucket or the first bin. If the probability is less or equal to 0.66, it goes into the second bucket or the bin. Otherwise, it goes into the third bucket. So that's how hard it was to create those connections, right? Pretty darn simple. Now, if I hit home and close and apply, hopefully we'll see the impact bin. Brilliant. No longer a date. And the risks are fine. Let's look at the relationships. Something's off with my probability key. Probability. I don't know if I spelled that correctly. For some reason it didn't connect. Let's just drag them over there and we've created the connection. You always need to double check your relationships. Brilliant. So let's bring out a matrix and bring out the impact bins on columns, not rows, and then probability bin on rows. Good. And we can also see that now we've sorted them the right way. And yeah, it looks good. Let's bring in the risks, count them. It automatically counts the risks, and it actually is good. That is correct. Perfect. Let's, we're almost there, right? No, of course not. Life isn't that easy, unfortunately. Let's bring out the risk ID, the project name, the owner, the budget, and do that as a table. There we go. Okay, brilliant. Let's bring out the, let's make this a, can I copy that over here? Let's make this a bar chart. Bar chart on value and project name, no, owner. There we go. So now this is the budget. So clicking the budget here, I can see I can interact with these things over owner, right? And if I select a single project here, you'll see the issue. So the risk count will actually will return blanks if I select something that will create a blank. It's not very good. If I select Helena and Mons, you'll see there's actually a blank there as well. It will show the column because we have other values in that column, or it will show that row because we've got other values in that row. But you want that to be a 0. That's an easy fix. Just go into measure and create a risk count and count the risk ID, or you could do a count rows, for instance. Now here comes the trick. +0 will always return a 0. So select the matrix, replace the risk ID count with the risk count, and suddenly, we got zeros. Perfect. So when it comes to the coloring then of this, how do you do? How do we get the green, the ambers, and the reds, the diagonal kind of view of this? So if I go in and select the conditional formatting on this, I have the background color, turn it on, and I had advanced color controls. And in here, I've got the standardized color scale that uses the number that's in the field that I select here for coloring. However, look at this one. There's a field value here. I think this came in June or July or something of 2018. So let's look at that. If I select that, I can select a measure, for instance. The problem I can't select this now is because the field value wants a hex color. So we need to put a hex color in there somehow. Okay, interesting. So how do we do that? Well, when I played around with the sorting, I realized that the numbers in there could actually be used. So let's remove the risk count and put the probability key in here instead. So if I sum the key, You see that it's 3, of course, up here, and 2 and 1, right? So what if you sum both of these guys? The probability and the impact key. Let's do that. Let's create a new measure that we call bin sum. Sounds like a Vietnamese dish, but it is not. It is just a sum of the keys. So impact key plus sum of the key probability key, and bring that into the values, and we get an error. And why do we do that? Well, most probably because these are impact key. This is actually formatted as a text, so I missed that. So it should be a whole number. Change the date. That's also the reason why it didn't connect, right? Impact key, probability key, and now if we bring my bin sum into here, we get the sum. And what's interesting, of course, here is that you see these colors here, sorry, the numbers, 2 and 3, these are the ones that should be green. The 4s are the ones that should be amber. The 5 and the 6 are the ones that should be red, high risk ones, right? So this could actually be done by some kind of rule. So we only need to type in 3 rules in order to get coloring correct over 9 cells. Brilliant. So let's do that. So if we go in and look at this measure, the bin sum measure, let's use that and actually create a variable of this. So instead we call this color KPI equals, then I do a new row, and I define a variable that I call bin sum, just using the same measure there. I then do a return, and now I'm going to do a switch. A switch essentially is a case statement. So I'll list a number of if statements, and if they're true, then something should happen. You should return a color code, a hexadecimal color code. So let's do that. Let's bring it. This could also be a false, but we want this to be a true. And now you start typing the statements. So bin sum, my variable that I defined in here that used to be a measure. You can actually do this with a measure as well. Bin sum is smaller than or equal to 3. Then what do? We enter a hex code, and I actually have that in my nifty little Windows 10 clipboard functionality that we have now. So bin sum, this is a bit tricky. If it's 4, then we're going to take another one. Then we're going to take the FC100 color, which is the amber one, the Power BI amber, I should just be very clear with. And there's something going on with this version of Power BI. I have a preview version of the October release, so maybe that's why it's kind of the IntelliSense is kind of angry with me. If it is larger than, we don't need it equals. If it's larger than 4, we just type in the red one, and that's the last color. That's the red one. And I think we're done. So now, instead of numbers, we have hex codes showing up in this measure. In this matrix. So, and remember, these measures will be evaluated here as well, even though they won't show. Right? So, going in here, going into conditional formatting, advanced controls, and change color scales to field value instead. I go into risks and select my color KPI and hit OK, and boom, suddenly we have the correct colors. What this means is that when I hit one of these, it will be 0, so the numbers here won't affect that. However, if I slice these things, it will be affected. So important, you do not use these impact statements. as slicers, because that will slice the data, right? See that? Will actually be right though, but yeah, you don't use these impacts because that will slice the entire thing. So you shouldn't do that. You should just if you want to slice the data by these bins, you should use these bins instead, impact keys, and maybe that would be a good idea here to do that. But I mean, this is for me is kind of unnecessary, right? Because all you can do is you can just hit there and see how it slices. But yeah, you can add other kinds of dimensions if you want to slice it differently. The main thing is that the color stays and you can get filters and whatnot. Here you see a problem. If you add impact bin to this, it'll actually slice the bin, right? So remove impact bin from there. Now it will show correctly. Okay. Well, that was what I wanted to show. A nice looking little interactive risk matrix. Okay. Thank you for watching.